I'm on dada, baby, no go put me for the corner. Girl, I want to take you to my mama. Girl, I want to love you till forever. Something about love, something about us. And it is we don't love, and it is we don't love us. It in the be like highway.
El pueblo está contigo, Maduro, Maduro, el pueblo está contigo. Maduro, aguanta, se levanta, Maduro, aguanta, que el pueblo se levanta, Maduro, Maduro, el pueblo está contigo.
We're in downtown Caracas. A huge march stretched through the city today, full of people who support Nicolas Maduro, who support the government, but also many people who don't, who never supported Nicolas Maduro. But what unites all of them is that what happened they find unacceptable. They simply cannot accept that America came. They bombed Caracas, their capital. They kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, and they thought that they could dominate Venezuela. What people here want to show is that they remain unbroken, that bombs and guns and jets won't break them, and that if the United States returns with the threatened military operation, that these people, they will resist, that the women, the men, even the children, they say, will continue to resist, and they won't give up their homeland, they won't give up their minerals, their oil to Donald Trump.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I know that I told people that I was planning on ending this podcast season 6 this week. But Donald Trump wanted to make it all about him and do things that no one expected to happen. So here we are. We got a 2-part series on Venezuela and Latin American politics before I even put out my last episode. And it's important. I am here with a new guest. Alex Suarez will be joining us momentarily. We have Raymond Parker, who is an activist. Raymond, honestly, it's best if you tell them what you do.
Oh God. Okay. So I guess like as far as my credentials go, I am a former PSL member based out of Gainesville, Florida. But prior to that, I did my master's thesis research in Nicaragua with the ATC, or the Asociación de Trabajadores de Campo, which is a Sandinista organization, a syndicate organization that was founded in the midst of the Sandinista struggle against the Somoza occupation and regime. And they are essentially a giant organization across the entire country made up of cooperatives and independent families of campesinos, or peasants. And I was living and working with and doing my research with the all-women cooperatives to understand the impact of socialist governance on campesinos and on the most vulnerable. And so my specific specialization in regards to my master's degree, which is in development practice, is very much in local sovereignty and with a very explicit anti-imperialist lens. I've been living and working in Peru since 2021, but continuously since 2022 in February. My university tried to expel me for the role that I played in the Palestine protests in Gainesville, so that was lots of fun. And now, essentially, I am the professional trash man. And we organize the local volunteers, specifically Peruvians and also Venezuelan refugees and migrants in Cusco, because we have quite a lot of young folks who are interested in the environment. And I essentially work as a conduit in order to bring local volunteers who otherwise wouldn't have the ability to access their archaeological sites, their cultural heritage, and the rural areas. And we bring them out to those areas to clean, to reforest, to get to know the local communities and build solidarity amongst ourselves. Essentially, the point of the brigade and of the volunteer group, we are called Munaimi, which basically means like beautiful reciprocity in Quechua. For those who know, it's a play on words. And the idea is essentially to help the volunteers form class consciousness through the act of revolutionary praxis. So environmentalism is something that's very easy for all folks to get into. And typically, once they get into environmentalism, they don't stay in environmentalism. They continue to understand that the trash and the contamination of our soil because of illegal mining, because of the loss of our trees, of the green revolution, which is not really a very green revolution at all, is actually destroying our lives for the purpose of profit, and it makes folks more radicalized and want to continue. So we are an unofficial Marxist-Leninist organization. Marxist-Leninist ends. The volunteers just don't know it yet. And the idea is for them to arrive at that conclusion organically. The act of picking up trash and planting trees. God damn it.
Right. And and that is just so important. The work you are doing, and you said that you are based right now in Peru.
Yes, so I have lived most of my life, or like most of my professional life, in Peru, from 2021 to 2022, right after and still during the pandemic. Let me be very clear about that. Peru had the most deaths per capita in the world. I was studying frogs in different points of the Amazon, and I have a lot of criticisms about a lot of things. But I came back to the United States to get my master's degree so I could go back, because as a foreign biologist, you cannot work as a biologist in Peru without a master's degree. And because my boss had left me on purpose in a situation of informality, I was unable to apply to a Peruvian university because I was undocumented. And so I'm back in that same situation again for very similar reasons. And this time, instead of giving up and going back, my strategy has just been to make myself so useful for local governments that they have no objective option except to go to the mayor and put pressure on the local government to legalize me. So that's the current strategy, is just be like, fuck you, I'm helpful, don't worry about it, it's gonna be fine. Literally just faking it until we make it. I know more about the trash than them, and the people believe more in me than in the local public institutions. So like, you gotta work that shit, I don't know, like, use it. It sucks, but like, weaponize it.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta do what the hell you gotta do out here at the end of the day.
I mean, it's like I said to the United States, like in our Palestine protests, like, I might be just like, so like useless little white guy, but like, I gotta weaponize that shit. So I'm gonna weaponize that shit here. Like, if we can get more attention because I'm some weird little gringo who's picking up trash, fantastic. Come to our trash cleanups, learn about the culture, and fucking defend it, like, period.
Facts. So let's talk about, before we get into Peru, because that's a whole new conversation that a lot of people don't know much about, and
I think the majority of the left knows very little about Peru.
I think I'm like one of the small platforms that have talked about Peru, and a lot of major left platforms don't really speak about Peru as much as I have as well. So this is why I wanted to say, guys, that this is going to be a 2-part series, because not only are we going to talk about Venezuela, but we're going to talk about a dictatorship that the United States has been backing and have been quiet on and have been using our tax dollars to continue to back. So it's another element of the hypocrisy that our government and the previous government has displayed as well too. That's Democrat and Republican. Raymond, Alex Suarez should be on soon, but we'll get right into it and he'll just have to join us. We have had a very surprising chain of events that has happened. I know that I woke up in the morning and looked right at my phone at like 7 o'clock a.m. and saw that Maduro was kidnapped. First mistake. Right. First mistake, look at the phone and just lose my mind. I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell just happened? This
I
cannot
hate
be
the
real.
stoplight, dog. I want out.
What was it like for you, like when you first found out? Because I know you were in Peru, so did you
Oh
find out a lot earlier?
no, actually, because of the work that I do, I was literally running around like a chicken with my head cut off, doing organizing things. I was barely on my phone. I was just like frantically messaging the volunteers, trying to. We have a trash cleanup this upcoming Saturday and a nature walk to explore medicinal plants in
Right.
Calca, which is super fun. But also, then you have the jarring reality of Maduro being kidnapped while you're trying to plant trees, and you're just like, ugh. Oh, why can't we just plant the trees in peace and be okay?
Right.
Um, and it was crazy because I do have a lot of friends in our organization who are Venezuelan. A lot of them are young queer women. One of them is my tattoo artist, and we're pretty close. And he also did my piercings. And he messaged me. He's like, "Yo, we got to go get a drink and celebrate that Maduro was overthrown." And I was like, "Ooh, no!" No, I studied this. Like I know, like he's a Venezuelan who's been living in Peru for the past 7 years, and for like class context, right? Because class context is important. His class aspiration is petite bourgeois, but he is a small business owner because he owns a small business, and
Right.
so he is therefore a proletarian. But his class aspirations are petite bourgeoisie, and he had his tattoo business as well and other businesses in Venezuela. And because of mismanagement of the economy, he lost those businesses and he emigrated
Wow.
to Peru as an economic refugee. So, what we'll see with Venezuela is that there are two major waves of migration. The first major wave was after Chavez was first elected, and especially after the end of the coup in 2002 against him. We have massive waves of the bourgeois fleeing Venezuela to resettle in Miami principally, but also they went to New York and some went to Los Angeles because there is a very large portion of reactionary Latinos that are in LA, especially Contras from Nicaragua. And they are very dangerous, and they often work together. And then the second wave of migration began a little bit after Maduro took office, and those were economic migrants that were leaving, fleeing poverty, and not the political situation or what they feared would happen to them. But what we also see in Venezuela is that Venezuela had a very incomplete revolution in terms of its Bolivarian revolution. And what I mean by that is that when we look at the example of Cuba, for example, the vast majority of their bourgeois fucked off immediately. And so they were able to build socialism within the country amongst the working class and amongst themselves, albeit with lots of interference from the United States externally, but from very minimal internal interference up until the last couple of decades, in which the US propaganda machine has been able to penetrate more and more and more. And also the fact that the reality of the US sanctions means that the situation on the ground in Cuba is a lot more extreme than it was during the special period. And that's very important for current context. But Cuba does not have the same contradictions that Venezuela has, which is that 80% of the Venezuelan economy is still private. So there's that. And so the majority of the means of production are still in the hands of private enterprise. And that means that the private enterprise has been doing everything in its power to undermine the Bolivarian Revolution since its initiative, or since its inicio, the beginning. And that has led to an extremely complex situation in which the people in general who are more disposed to be reactionary, who have petite bourgeois class aspirations, or who are bourgeois, who see themselves as entitled to those things if they are lighter skinned, are very much more upset with Maduro because they're much more willing to blame Maduro for things that are caused by the interference of the private sector with the Bolivarian Revolution. And it has created a lot of discussion and a lot of disagreement about what is the real source of the struggle of the Venezuelan people in Venezuela. Added to that, you also have a lot of CIA databases and websites that exist to make Maduro out to be worse than he is. You have a lot of websites that are supposedly documenting corruption in Venezuela, and they all lead back to Maduro. But it's a CIA front website, and it's essentially bullshit information that is invented by the U.S. Department of Defense. And when you follow the sources, it links back to another U.S. Department of Defense source, and then it links back to the Defense Department, and then back to bullshit. So it's very hard as outsiders, as folks in the United States, as much as in solidarity as we are, or even other folks in Latin America outside of Venezuela, to really have a detailed understanding of the situation on the ground, because it has been so intentionally muddled. And I
we
understand.
I'm sorry. 1 second.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you just said, and I want to make sure.
I got you.
Down. Yeah.
We should break it down a bit.
I only have 15 minutes now, so
Yeah.
I
Alex
have a lot
Suarez,
that I wanted to share that I'm not going to be able to share now.
I
didn't get the link till way after the
so-
show started, and my phone, I had to mute it for a second, and then it just knocked me out. But I'm back now, so
you didn't get my text message that I sent you? I sent you the link.
I never got the link via text. I got the link via DM in the last couple of minutes.
Look, this is a text message right here. Feel me?
It's okay. You're here now.
Yeah, but it's all good. No, I'm kind of sad that it turned out that way, because it was a.
I'm gonna come back on Thursday for a longer show, anyways. But are you still there?
Yeah. You got 15 minutes. So
okay.
let's get you in. Have you met Raymond Parker before?
No. That's what I'm about to say. I want to know about your guest that you're having on now, how he's associated with Venezuela. And then I don't know if you told your listeners earlier about my involvement in Venezuela. When I used to be your co-host, I mentioned Venezuela a lot, but go ahead. Tell me about the guest you're having.
Oh, no, Raymond is from our mutual friend who introduced us, and he was able to come on. He works in Peru.
Oh, yes. You're talking about Paulo's comrade.
Yes.
Paulo's comrade. So Paulo and I were both on the same committee for the Uhuru movement. So that's how I know him, and we both happen to have the same heritage, because my father's Peruvian. But okay, now I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So tell us real quick your thoughts, and of course we're gonna go more into it on part 2 on Thursday. But your thoughts?
Thursday is when we're gonna have a longer show. I wanted to give like 20-30 minutes of, and I'll do it about 15 minutes.
I apologize.
And then you could go back on with your guests to give you some updates, because, as you know, I have contacts on the ground in Venezuela.
Yes,
I was in Venezuela in November of 2021 as a regional election observer. I'm fluent in Spanish. I've written 2 books on Venezuela. One of them's in 3 languages, the one on the Alex Saab case. While I was in Venezuela, I met Alex Saab's wife, and I made her a promise. Well, by the way, Raymond, are you familiar with the Alex Saab case?
Yes.
Okay, so for those that don't know, Alex Saab was a Venezuelan diplomat that was freed in December of 2023 after being 3.5 years held in captivity, first in Cape Verde Island, and then he was kidnapped by the Biden regime after initially being kidnapped by the Trump regime and brought to Miami on trumped-up charges. I was present at his hearing at the initial days of his trial before he was finally released in an exchange, and wrote a book on the case that's in Italian, Spanish, and English. And it's a book that's was well received in Venezuela, has been mentioned on Telesur and other channels. And now we have another comrade in captivity who should be called a kidnapping. I don't know if you saw, Raymond or Comrade Jamar, the BBC insider email that came out that forbid them. Yeah, they said that you have to refer to what happened with Maduro as a capture, or I don't remember what the other word was, but they said you're forbidden from calling it a kidnapping. But that's what it is in every way, shape, and form, just as it was for Ambassador Saab. And I predicted this. I didn't say it was going to be Maduro, but I said that the fact that they're not respecting diplomatic immunity and they're getting away with this and they're able to bring him to this country, they're going to try to do it with other officials. And now they've done it with Maduro. Unbelievable. But let me tell you, Venezuela is not Panama. This is the land of liberators. Venezuela is not the Latin America of 1990. It's Latin America of 2026, and other Latin American countries, including Brazil, including Chile. These are both countries I've had issues with in the past couple of years with Venezuela. All those countries now, including Spain. Spain's the only one standing up in the EU for Palestine and for Venezuela right now. But including Spain, they had a joint statement Let me think of the countries off the top of my head. It was Colombia, Mexico, Chile, Brazil, and Spain. All had a joint statement condemning the kidnapping of Maduro. And if anything, it's united the Chavista forces in a cowardly pre-dawn raid. And I have details. Some of it hasn't been reported in English yet of what happened that night. And we'll get into more on Thursday, on January 8th. But some of the details that emerges, over 30 Cuban guards were killed.
34.
And there were people on, 34. And there was people on Twitter, attacking these brave guards saying, oh, they weren't so tough after all. Guess what? If they were tough, some of them would have lived. If they were not tough, some of them would have lived. Some of them would have been wounded. The fact that they all died means none of them surrendered, that they fought till the end to defend Maduro. And there was Venezuelan guards, not just Cubans, because some people say, where were the Venezuelans? I actually know for a fact that there was Venezuelan guards there that night at the safe house. And some of the Venezuelans shot at a U.S. helicopter gunship, preventing it from landing to take Maduro. It delayed their plans. They almost didn't get him because of the Venezuelan resistance at a pre-dawn raid where they turned electricity off, a complete surprise attack. So the fact that we're talking about a country that's not a military superpower, the way they were able to resist against the Delta Force and the level of sacrifice that it took to get Maduro out, where he was wounded in his leg, where they broke his wife's ribs. The fact that it took all of that to get two people out shows a lot of the Venezuelans wanted him to remain. And also, think of it. The U.S. empire knows better than anybody they're democratic, not just election observers like myself, because they've invested millions for more than 20 years to try to oust the Chavistas, Chavez included, before Maduro. And they've never been able to do it. All the money they put into their media there, in the corporations, in the opposition, they've never been able to. They won some governorships, the opposition. I was there for regional elections, a minority of regions, but
that's
they've never won a presidential election. Yeah. Sorry?
They did win elections, and the lie that Machado was saying that all of them is excommunicated out is a fucking lie.
Absolutely. So the point I want to make is that they've never won a presidential election. They've only won some local elections. Yeah. And the U.S. empire knows this because they put the full weight of their money and influence into Venezuela and still lost. So that's how popular the Chavistas is. It took them sending in a foreign force, a Delta force, cowardly in the dead of night to have to remove Maduro and bring him to New York. But this is not the end of it. And also, Maduro is an incredibly charismatic person. I can show you pictures of one of the policemen that received him in New York. I believe he was Hispanic, so he was talking Spanish with Maduro. And Maduro was so charismatic that not only did this officer take the cuffs off, he hugged him and is smiling with Maduro. And people don't understand the Chavista defiance. They're like, why is Maduro smiling? He's smiling sarcastically. He's smiling to show the empire that you're not going to hold me down. That is the Chavista dignity.
God, Alex is on fire. Y'all, both of y'all, Raymond, Alex, both of y'all on fire, bro.
and so to me, Maduro is like my godfather. His son is like my cousin. I know Maduro has known about me over the years. I didn't get to meet him. I almost did when I was in Venezuela. If I insist a little bit more, I would have. But Maduro's known about me. I've been on presidential radio in Venezuela when he was president. He knows about my efforts for Alex Saab. I really feel for his son right now. His son is 35 years old. He's a little bit younger than me. But his son appeared before the parliament when they were spreading rumors that Delcy Rodriguez, who's the daughter of a political prisoner who was tortured to death by the CIA in a Venezuelan dungeon. That's how Chavista she is. Her father was tortured to death. She comes from a Chavista family. Her brother is in the National Assembly. So Delcy Rodriguez, they were spreading rumors. These despicable imperialists were spreading rumors saying that she had set it up where she was going to take over with the imperialists against Maduro. And you know what Maduro's son did when he heard that? He insisted on being the one that held the Bible when she was sworn in as the interim president of Venezuela. Maduro's son, who looks just like him and is very much like him and is adored by the Chavistas. That sent a message to the imperialists, you're not going to divide us. That was very important. That's why it's my new cover picture now on Twitter. It shows the moment that Delcy Rodriguez sworn in with Maduro's son, he's known as Nico Maduro instead of Nicolas Maduro, is standing right there. That sends a message to the imperialists that they're not going to divide the Chavistas. They're getting more united now than ever. The people are rising up.
A lot of people have made those remarks, Raymond, especially on the progressive journalists, and I have saw journalists go to conclusions so fast and just say that I think Delcy was a betrayer. Also, I also I think it was who's the dude that reports in Ukraine? It's a white guy, of course. I can't think of his doggone name, but he reports correctly on Ukraine, but he just automatically just says, "Oh, I think Delcy got paid off," and I'm just like, bro, so
because these people are ignorant. They don't speak Spanish. They're ignorant. They don't know the history of Delcy's family. The Rodriguez family is one of the most respected socialist families in Venezuela. Her father was a martyr. Her brother is head of the National Assembly. He swore her in with Maduro's son there. Like, this is a Chavista family. And matter of fact, she's more diehard than Maduro. Everybody knows that. Maduro started out as Chavez's diplomat. He wasn't, as his foreign minister, he wasn't vice president first. So Maduro's always been more diplomatic, kind of like Alex Saab. You know, I don't want to say moderate. They're still revolutionaries, but they're more diplomatic in how they deal with the empire. Delcy Rodriguez represents the hardcore. She's not going to give in. It's quite the opposite.
I think Trump that's a really important point, if I can add, is that, like,
because she's a woman, she's going to give it. It's quite the opposite. The Chavista women, you don't want to mess with them. She is on fire, and she's going to lead the nation until Maduro's return.
What were you trying to say?
If I just add real quick, that's a very important point, and that there's a lot of folks, especially in the quote-unquote West, which I just want to be clear is just United States, Canada, and Western Europe for the most part, that do not speak Spanish, that are not reading these reports, that have a strong racial bias. And there's also a very strong bias and a reason why a lot of our news and our literature, and especially our political literature and history, is not translated. It's not translated on purpose, because if it's not translated, Western leftists can't educate themselves into how much farther ahead folks are here than, no offense, but folks are in the States. Like, folks in the States are decades behind where revolutionary action and political consciousness is in Latin America.
I got 3 minutes. I want to make one more point.
Go, homie, go.
The Constitution, I'm going to read from south to north, just off the top of my head. The constitutions of Peru, of Ecuador, of Bolivia, of Colombia, of Panama, and of course of Venezuela, all have the name of one man written on it. And I was at his gravesite the same day that I went to see the gravesite of Chavez in 2021. And that man was Simón Bolívar. He freed all those nations from the Spanish imperialists, which was the most powerful empire in the world at the time, just as the U.S. empire is today. These are the descendants of liberators. That's what the Americans don't understand. That's what the imperialists don't understand. You know, that they're like, what does Peru have to do with Venezuela? They were all freed under the banner of the Venezuelan liberator. These people are going to fight till the end. It would take at least 50 years of a guerrilla war in those impenetrable regions of Venezuela for them to subjugate and kill off those Chavistas. It would take 50 years, and by then the U.S. would pull out. So this cowardly act is the only way they thought they were going to intimidate the Chavistas, and has done quite the opposite. And other Latin American countries are rising up, including countries that had serious diplomatic issues with Venezuela. Brazil wouldn't let Venezuela into BRICS. You know, now Lula and even Boric, who's always been critical of Venezuela, because at least Lula had some good relations with Chavez, are now sympathetic with Maduro and saying that it's wrong to have taken them. So if anything, it's uniting people more than ever. Just as the attack on the fishermen in Colombia, because Colombia's had issues with Venezuela, even though they were the same nation at one point. It's uniting all these people now, fed up with the U.S. empire, and they're not going to accomplish what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's going to be a very serious. People should very much pay attention to see what's going on in these following next days, and especially the whole entire month, because we already just saw that they took back the cartel existence. They made a backtrack.
That was invented
they got nothing on him. They got nothing.
Guess who said
they
it?
just
60
wanted
An American News Corporation said it. 60 Minutes, back in the 90s. They said that the Cartel de los Soles was invented by the CIA. This is before Chavez was even in power in Venezuela. And you're going to say Maduro sent them? That's beyond delusion.
It's like the State Department just citing itself for its own justification for military intervention. Oh, why are you doing that? Oh, our State Department sources said that like this was so, but you invented that source. So like,
and then sometimes he has a moment of sanity, and he actually says things that are true, and they're like, shut up, but he says it. He says it live in the press conference. He's like, well, now we're going to govern Venezuela. Oh no, it's our land they took from us. Where? In Venezuela. Like, he's actually saying it, you know, so it's so obvious. Everybody knows now, even the most ignorant Americans that watch the news a little bit, know that there's no fentanyl in Venezuela. So they've changed the narrative. Now it's cocaine, but it's like the old DEA estimates show a very minute amount of cocaine that gets out to Venezuela, and that's probably because of Colombian groups have entered Venezuela and weren't able to be detected. But Petro, to be fair to him, is clamping down on the drug trade. He's been very vocal against this kidnapping, and so let's hope that these forces unite and that there's a reversal and that Maduro somehow is returned soon. But if anything, to conclude, it's emboldened the Chavista and the socialist movement in Latin America. And so I have hope now that more than ever, that the U.S. influence is going to be out of there. I heard that all the BRICS countries, in defiance of U.S. sanctions, all unilaterally, right after Maduro was taken away, went and got Venezuelan oil, and the U.S. Navy didn't dare touch them because they know that they pissed these people off. And probably now Venezuela will join BRICS under Delcy Rodriguez's leadership until Maduro's return. But if anything, it's going to backfire because Maduro's one person. The Chavista movement goes on.
Yeah. And I know you're about to leave soon, but I just want to add that we see that now with the understanding that their administration is still going on, it's still business as usual, and they have militias and
all the institutions are intact.
Right.
Yes.
So this illusion that they
even lied about bombing the barracks where Comandante Chavez is buried, which I was at. They said they bombed it and they did an AI picture. Right. And they never even touched that. Like they wouldn't dare touch that. But it's like
if they had, can you imagine the reaction if they actually had like?
Oh, they're gonna be afraid of a dead body buried in a barracks. Yeah, but it's like they're just trying to show that they're doing damage that they didn't dare do. So it's just pathetic. But thank you, comrades. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Salud. Salud.
So sorry about the miscommunication. We'll definitely gonna get it on Thursday. So that was Alex Suarez, everybody, who is, as you can tell, not playing any games. We are all not playing any games because it's embarrassing what's going on. Like my country is looking crazy right now.
Yes.
The fact that, all right, where's the report?
Well, it's been looking crazy, but like it's like nakedly crazy in like an Emperor's new clothes kind of a way. Like it's new levels of absurdist bullshit.
It's insane how they just. I'm like, who is in their PR? Who's in their propaganda group that is so like loose with this? Like I would be yelling at Donald Trump every single day, like, please shut the fuck up. You're saying everything.
Whatever you're taking, stop.
You don't want them to know. Like
whatever Elon gave you, stop taking it, please.
Yeah, literally. Whatever Elon gave you, I don't know if you're freaking out the Epstein shit and you try to distract. I think that's what's going on, but you are just giving out too much information, my guy. Too much information.
Yeah.
This came out a few hours ago. Oh, wait, let's get Raymond back up here. StreamYard did an update, guys, so there's a little bit of glitching that's going on, but there's always glitching with StreamYard, but they got to give us their excuse. The U.S. backtracks on Maduro's case, drops the claim Venezuela cartel de la Sol ever existed. This just came out today, Raymond.
I saw that. Oh. Everybody that I know in Peru that is progressive was sharing that article and just being like, they literally have nothing on him because everything they're accusing him of, like fentanyl, cocaine, the CIA itself announced the week before the bombing that they don't have any sources saying that Venezuela is a source for either of those drugs. So I'm very interested to see what kind of evidence the prosecution is going to offer. If it even gets that far.
Yeah. I think that, what do you think, leader on? Then we'll go to Peru after this. What do you think is going to happen in this case? Because we're not going to see Maduro in the courtroom again until March. So they're planning on keeping him incarcerated, him and his wife, clearly locked up in jail. Everybody's making jokes that he's with
same situation as Castillo. Their human rights, are going to be violated. They are not going to receive proper care for their injuries, and that's going to be on purpose to hope that they get infected, they get ill, they're not able to stand trial. we can anticipate all of those kinds of violations, and the people need to be very vigilant, especially whether or not I don't give a. It's like I don't give a fuck like what your opinion is on Maduro. Like straight up, this has actually nothing to do with him. Maduro being an unpopular in quotes, right, leader outside of Venezuela has given the United States a very easy excuse to justify this action. That, oh my God, he's a dictator. According to who, bitch? He's a democratically elected president. Like, according to whomst. And I was like, he's a dictator. He does all these things, blah, blah, blah. Ignoring the effect of U.S. sanctions, ignoring the fact that United States weapon shipments have been found on the border of Colombia to Venezuela in so-called humanitarian aid that was going to the far right just a couple of years ago. And that's the reason why Maduro suspended humanitarian aid, because it was literally just arms shipments. So, like, a dictator according to who, you know? And so, but this propaganda has been very much latched onto by even by leftists, who are over here saying that, oh yeah, like Maduro is bad, but also invading Venezuela is bad. Actually, like Maduro in Venezuela is very popular. So you need to drop that narrative, and your solidarity must be militant and with the people, whether or not that perspective is popular in the United States or not, and especially because it is unpopular, because Maduro is just an excuse. The United States needs to capture Venezuela in this geopolitical situation, because as Chavez said while he was still alive, they have oil to last them over 100 years. The United States is running out of places where it can get cheap oil, and Venezuela is the closest person to the United States to fulfill that need. So as a result, they can continue with their destruction of the climate. They can continue ignoring all the climate accords. They don't have to switch over to sustainable energy and engineer an energy transition, which might save our lives. We are already at the point where, like, as a biologist, like we're cooked. Like, we're cooked, chat. Like, it's over. We've got a couple of years before massive climate catastrophe really starts hitting. In the Andes, we are already losing all our glaciers. Venezuela was the first South American country to lose all of its glaciers. That's horrible. That's also going to lead in Venezuela to water insecurity, and we are also experiencing that here in Peru. Like, we might be one of the next countries to lose our glaciers as well. We have one very famous glacier called Pastoruri, which is located in the department of Ancash, and our engineers estimate that maybe Pastoruri has between 3 to 5 years left, but once deglacialization starts, it is exponential in how it increases. And so it might even be less than that. You can see the final layer of the glacier exposed, and I've been there to pick up trash. But it's very serious, because the United States is capturing Venezuela to not only use its oil, but to also super exploit the people. And so we are going to see, if the United States doesn't install a military junta like it says it wants to, we will see a massive reconsolidation of wealth and property up to the former ruling class. It will not be the proletariat that returns to Venezuela, but the ruling class, to recapture those industries and to re-entrench themselves in line with the United States and with and in line with the profit motive. They are going to go back to make themselves the running dogs of empire, to sell out their countrymen, their country, the environment, all of it, for pure profit. This is also very strategic, because then the United States has a very strategic military base in Venezuela that it would be able to take advantage of if it was to establish itself to menace Colombia, because Colombia has elections coming up next year, and they want to install another far-right ally. If they could consolidate power within those two regions, that puts Peru in a very dangerous situation. We already have 7 United States military bases in the country. We are already occupied, and we have been occupied. I need to make that very clear. The United States not only backed the Fujimori genocide committed against the Andean people, in which over 300,000 indigenous women were forcibly sterilized without their knowledge, in addition to the massacres committed against indigenous communities, primarily in the Andes, but also in the Amazon region, and against any person who is deemed vaguely progressive, vaguely leftist. So, like, university teachers, students, young men in general. There are mass graves in the Andes where we still don't know where all those bodies are. We don't know the names of everybody that was murdered, because there were so many people that the government murdered, that the government just also contributed to the loss and the erasure of those actions, because it was done in the name of self-defense. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but the United States contributed to those massacres. Those massacres were committed with the training done from the U.S. military and the CIA.
You're saying that since So Dina's no longer president. Dina's no longer the dictator
No,
no more. There's a new
no.
dictator.
Dina was cooed, so now we have a new one. Ah,
Motherfucker.
yeah, no, yeah, another slimy ass fucking bitch. His name is Jose Heri, and he is a member of the party Somos Peru. He is a sexual predator. He has multiple denuncios or like police reports filed against him by young women. Um,
Are you
and
safe
he
talking about this right now?
say what?
Are you safe talking about this right now?
Yeah, nobody is. I mean, nobody knows who I am. I mean, like they only know about me from my environmental stuff, but like I'm only famous in Spanish. So like, but this is not going to reach anybody that can actually touch me. So
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure because you're in Peru talking about the new dictator. So
fuck 'em. Look me. I plant trees. What do you do, bitch? Come at me. I'm useful. You not. I'm doing positive things for society. You ain't. Like whatever. You got the world's ending anyway, you know. So like, if you don't speak out, like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, we don't got shit to lose. Now is the time. It's been the time.
oh, yeah, the lines in the sand.
So like, yeah, like personal safety be damned. You know, like I don't care. But he and the Peruvian Congress have just passed a motion essentially allowing the United States Army to come into Peru whenever they want, starting now, and do military exercises and training. So this is like some Monroe Doctrine shit where we are seeing the erosion of our sovereignty more and more every year. Peru does not have oil. We kind of do in the selva, but not nearly as much as Venezuela. What we really have, the United States wants is copper, and we are seeing a massive amount of illegal mining, particularly in the Madre de Dios region, which is a little bit south of where I currently live, a little bit southwest, and it is absolutely eradicating the Amazon. Where there is gold mining, that forest is gone. It is never coming back. It is too contaminated, and
it's all destroyed. It's like all cut down.
It's not just cut down, but in order to mine gold, you need these massive kind of like flooded pits. And so not only are the trees in the understory completely destroyed, but also the hydrology is also fucked. And because of the way that that gold is extracted, you're also introducing other dangerous heavy metals in that extraction process. And then the waters are seemingly contaminated. That leads to local people having very high levels of very dangerous heavy metals in their blood, such as lead. And that leads to brain damage in young children. It stunts their growth. It stunts their learning. So these are like young people that are growing up in this environment that will never be able to, quote unquote, productively contribute to society, but they'll also never be able to meaningfully contribute to their communities because they are so incapacitated from such an early age. It also leads to infertility and sterilization. It leads to a number of other health crises, all of which is just going to lower your life expectancy.
So to the sterilization of the women, this is what contributed? And
so this contributes as a side effect. What Fujimori did was he launched, he was a far-right dictator. He did a self-coup shortly after he was first elected. And let me pull up the date so I don't speak incorrectly. But yeah, so he did a self-coup in 1993. And after that, he decided that he was going to overturn and rewrite the Constitution in order to benefit him and his cronies. So he completely abandoned the quasi-progressive platform that he ran upon and capitulated 100% to the far right. And this is key. And he adopted a very hardline far-right economic and social policy. One of those policies, in order to combat poverty, was to go into the Andes and go into indigenous communities and offer women injectable birth control that sterilized them.
Yeah.
It was not birth control. They were not helping with family planning. They intentionally sterilized these women without their knowledge, sometimes even up to the extent of performing unwanted hysterectomies on women who came in with like uterine problems, with pregnancy complications. They just sterilized them without their knowledge or consent in a lot of cases. Fujimori was incarcerated for other issues because he tried to flee the country with, I believe, like $2 million worth of soles to go to Japan, and then he decided he was going to come back one day, and he like live streamed basically that he was coming back to Peru, and the police were like, how convenient, and arrested him as soon as he got there. So he was not actually arrested for the crimes against humanity that he committed. And so that was a genocide that was committed under Fujimori, was a forced sterilization of indigenous women to prevent them from reproducing because they're supposedly in poverty, not because of systemic racism and colonialism and imperialism, but because they just were reproducing too much. And this is very common Malthusian policy, where you blame the poor for their own suffering because poor people are more likely to have more children because you live in poverty. Your children are less likely to survive, especially in the Andes. So you try to have more children to guarantee that somebody will take care of you in your old age. Somebody can help you out on the farm. And Peru is a very Catholic country as well. And so birth control in general is very much looked down upon and not encouraged. And a popular form of birth control is literally just like separation of the family. So like the man and the woman just separate, so because otherwise he will essentially forcibly impregnate, rape his wife again and again and again, and she will be forced to bear children, and because they don't believe in birth control because we are so Catholic. And it's a very complex situation for that reason. It's also why we had so many deaths during COVID, because of the forced sterilization of the indigenous people, most of whom were Andean, about 270,000 of which are Andean, 30,000 of which were from the Amazon regions. We have many Amazonian regions. Peru is much more Amazonian than Andean, but the Andes are much more densely populated. And so that's why more people in the Andes were sterilized. So when COVID hit us, we had the most deaths per capita because people live with this generational trauma. And they remember, they're like, oh, the last time a public health individual came to us saying that we had to follow this policy because it was for our own good, we ended up losing Lord knows like how many children in those communities. And so there is an extreme distrust, especially between rural people who need the most access to healthcare and healthcare professionals. So the healthcare literally cannot reach them because of this trauma, and especially because the government has never answered for it. Fujimori died in September of last year without ever admitting to what he did or standing trial for those crimes. There has never been justice. There has never been any kind of reparations. And these women are still, and their descendants, their daughters are still trying to fight for their rights, for some kind of recognition and compensation, but they have been very largely ignored by the federal government. And it's one of the biggest failures in public health policy in the last 50 years, and because this did not happen, this happened in the 90s, but this is probably like the most significant health traumatic event that Peruvians en masse have experienced.
So the mass graves under Dina, what is your estimate? Because I last saw it was hundreds. You're saying that it was thousands.
Under Fujimori. So Fujimori rose to power on the heels of the Maoist guerrilla organization Sendero Luminoso, which is translated in English as the Shining Path. And the Shining Path was active from 1981 to about 1990. This is key because Fujimori came into power in the early 1990s. The leader of Sendero was actually arrested right after or right before Fujimori came into office. And so Fujimori adopted a scorched earth campaign against Sendero. And so at the time, the Peruvian military was working with the United States military and CIA to train and counterinsurgency to combat Sendero Luminoso. Sendero Luminoso, essentially their founder, I believe his name is Guzman, goes to China and observes the Cultural Revolution in China. And in a very non-Marxist-Leninist kind of way, he comes back and says, we should do the exact same thing here. Ignoring Peru's history, contradictions, needs. He's like, yes, let's just do it. And that's not, there is not a single Marxist-Leninist party in the entire world that recognizes Sendero as a legitimate ML association, military movement, guerrilla movement, what have you. They're very much broadly accepted as a terrorist organization. Once they started going to rural villages, the first one they went to was called Chuschi, which is in Ayacucho. And Ayacucho is one of the poorest departments in Peru. it also remains one of the most dangerous departments in Peru for foreigners because of the massive trauma they experienced under Sendero. To this day, Sendero's first action was burning voting booths so that people could not vote because they did not recognize the legitimacy of Peruvian elections, which is like, I guess fair because like it's a neoliberal country, but also like you're gonna do that before any kind of like political education or like talking to the people or like any kind of intelligence gathering. Like what are we doing? And so like you're doing this in front of like very conservative like campesinos who do not speak a lick of Spanish. They speak Quechua, and even though some of them spoke, yes, at least in that area because we have many. But even the ones who spoke Spanish, when the Sendero members were speaking to them about like their grand like Marxist Leninist Maoist proposals, they would literally turn. There happened to be an anthropologist living in the town at the time, and she wrote a book on her experiences called Para Defendernos, or To Defend Ourselves. And they told her like they're speaking another language, we don't know what they're saying. So these young guerrilla fighters essentially were trying to do some form of political education, but it was so inaccessible and it was so highbrow compared to what indigenous folks, especially in the rural countryside, are used to hearing, that they could not even begin to connect with it. They did not know why they were there. What they did know was that at the time when Sendero first became active, was that Sendero wanted to defend their culture and their way of life. And so that is why initially communities signed on to work and partner with Sendero. Initially, it got to a point after a couple of years where Sendero started indiscriminately just murdering anybody who did not immediately want to side with them. Whether or not people just wanted to maintain like neutral relations, they wouldn't have it. And they got to be extremely violent against the indigenous people. And as the first rule of a guerrilla movement, you don't attack the peasantry, dog. Like, those are your biggest allies. Right. What is your deal? So it was completely devastating. And Fujimori, as a result, after Guzman is captured, adopts a scorched earth campaign against Sendero. And when the communities start going to the government in Lima asking for help, instead of going and kicking out Sendero, they went and just murdered the entire village.
Got you.
Everybody. They didn't give a hoot who was Sendero, who was a campesino, and it's very clear who was who. They just went in and murdered everybody. There is a museum in Lima, and it's free. It's one of the only free museums in Lima, and it is dedicated to the memory of Sendero and the legacy of Sendero. But the Peruvian military government killed more people than Sendero ever did. And that's very important because that legacy and that memory and that history has been very actively erased. It's also one of the reasons why our political organizing here in Peru is so weak. We have a couple of left-leaning parties, all of which have different problems. One of them being is over-centralization in the capital. And so they don't have a very broad reach out here in the rural areas, even if rural folks are much more predisposed to be kind of leftist by proxy because they're fighting organically for the same things, for water, for land, for, safe food free of chemicals and contamination, for their indigenous history and titulación to be recognized, and for justice and reparations. All of those things are things that leftists and communists fight for, but they don't want to fight for it under a communist banner because they feel so betrayed by Sendero, and they have so little trust in the other communist parties. Partido Roja, which means Red Homeland, was a party, the Communist Party, founded by Jose Carlos Mariátegui, who was our principal, writer, communist thinker, scholar. He's like our Lenin if he had survived. He died very young. Mariátegui was amazing, and Mariátegui has not been translated very well into English. There's one collection, I think, on Pathfinder books that you can find of his work, but nothing else has been translated. And like I was saying earlier, that's very, very important because his work is still relevant today. Everybody should read Mariátegui, but not everybody can because it's inaccessible, because that translation has not been done because he's too radical. Too radical to be digestible by the West, right? And Patria Roja, his party, was affiliated and associated by the government at the time, by the Fujimori government, with Sendero Luminoso. And so Patria Roja, despite the fact that it was a very militant communist party, lost a lot of power and a lot of trust and prestige as a result of that, and it has not recovered to this day. So like where I currently live in Cusco, last year I lived in Ancash, which is farther north. I'm in the southwest. Ancash is central west. Ancash is Patria Roja essentially dissolved, and I came back while the youth branch was being reformed, and I was one of 2 active members of their youth branch. And then I left. I don't know if it's still active now because I moved. There was not a branch active in Iquitos when I was living there for 8 months. I tried to reach out to my handlers in Lima. They're like, we just don't have a presence. I was like, that's terrible. I came to Cusco. I reached out to my handler in Ancash, and I was like, do you have anybody here? And he was like, oh, yeah, we do have a guy, but he's kind of permanently been moved to Lima. You would be the only member at large. And I was like, this is the legacy of Sendero, and this is the legacy of Sendero and Fujimori's policies against the left. It has left us very weak, over-centralized, and afraid to assert ourselves in discourse. When we have protests as progressives, I wouldn't even say leftists, but as progressives and as a student movement, you can see that the demands are very tepid. They are asking for very basic things, like constitutional reform, or just out the Constitution, let's get a new one. But those demands often come from a very specific sector of university students and the campesinos, who still remain militant to this day. To a large extent, it is urban folks who are becoming more and more reactionary and counter-revolutionary and afraid of organizing as time goes on. So we even had a solidarity organization here in Cusco with Palestine that has basically dissolved. We have very little real political organizing in Cusco, and we are supposed to be one of the most progressive cities in the entire country.
So this new dictator, what was the person's name again?
This is Jose Heri.
So Jose Heri has no opposition basically at this point. The only opposition that Jose Heri will have to worry about is another right winger that's going to overthrow them, like how Dina was over. Is Dina dead right now?
No, I'm not quite sure where she is, but she's fine. She's fucked off. She is off the radar. Fuck her. But because our rightful president is still Pedro Castillo, and he was just condemned to 11 years. Yeah, to 11 years in prison for trying to do a coup. And I want to really hammer home on this concept. Because Fujimori dissolved the Peruvian Congress and the Supreme Court in 1992, effectively making him the dictator of Peru. And while the coup was criticized by Peruvian politicians, did the U.S. invade in order to expel this self-made dictator? Who did dissolve the Congress? Who did dissolve the Constitution? Did Maduro do that? I don't think so. But the United States did not invade Peru at that time to expel Fujimori, even though what he did do was a self-coup in order to make himself the president. Castillo did not do a self-coup in order to make himself the president. He tried to dissolve the Congress, actually using like legal precedent, where if the Congress denies his cabinet appointees X amount of times, he is allowed to dissolve Congress because they're obstructing his ability to govern. And so there is legal precedent for what Castillo did, or at least there is legality for it. And he was couped almost immediately because he wanted to rewrite the far-right Fujimori constitution to re-benefit the people, to go back to the agrarian reform, to be able to have some kind of, justice and reciprocity for the crimes that have been committed against indigenous people. And it was very important that Castillo himself is campesino. He is not necessarily indigenous, but he is campesino. Those things are very interrelated, but for the purpose of discussion, he is campesino. And it's not a coincidence that it is he who was couped, a socialist campesino president. he was accused widely, not only by Peruvians but also by other South Americans, of being, I think, just being stupid, of not knowing what he was doing, of being incompetent, of being an example of left wing um, incompetence and hypocrisy, because he ran on a very progressive platform and then was not able to effectuate anything he wanted to do, because just like when Obama was in office, the far right Congress did not allow any of his legislation to pass. Now, Obama was not a socialist, but they still stonewalled his legislation. The same thing happened here in Peru. And so while folks under the Obama administration were criticizing Obama for not doing X, Y, Z, whatever, he also couldn't do those things because he's being stonewalled. The same situation was happening here. And so you had this image in the Peruvian national consciousness of the failures of the socialist president, but not the failure of the Congress to work with him. Because the Congress is still stacked to the far right with the Fujimoristas. Keiko Fujimori, which is Alberto Fujimori, the dictator's daughter, continues to run in every single presidential cycle with the support of the United States in order to try and reprivatize.
So why is she not
Peruvian
in
industry is
power?
already,
Why is she
because
not
she's
in
very
power?
unpopular. We hate her ass. She's a bitch. She sucks. She has no policies except to reconstitute the dictatorship of her father. And everybody knows this. So everybody hates her. But she's also not in power currently because that's not how the chain of command works, basically. So like another congressman essentially had to be chosen to replace Dina because Dina was vice president. She was cooed. So congressman had to take his place, her place. And now in the election cycles happened again. Keiko is already campaigning. So
I mean, Deidre Wilder, who's a teacher out in Miami, I used to have on the show. He was totally right when he said that, because he's Peruvian as well too. He's like, dude, all they do is just make their money, steal as much money as they can, and then
quite literally in Fujimori's case.
Yes, like this is the tradition.
Fujimori literally bounced like a brief, like classic, like comic book bullshit, like briefcase full, like oh, why are you so comically evil?
Right.
Fujimori was, while he was alive, like the fourth most corrupt person in the entire world. Right, fourth most corrupt political leader, I should say, which, like, person, because all the most corrupt people are usually politicians, but massively corrupt. And again, it was the corruption charge and the stealing and laundering money that he was tried for and put in prison for, and not the crimes against humanity against the indigenous people. And that's very important for like our current context, because Peru is a country that has a lot of colorism. It has a lot of like hatred towards its indigenous folks. We see that particularly with how Castillo was treated by the public following the coup against him, and how people largely talk about left-wing and progressive governments because they are majority non-white governments. And so as a result, there's a lot of extra contempt laundered their way because there is that racialized element to it. And I guess like that brings us kind of like full circle back to Venezuela, because we have a lot of folks on the ground here cheering on this coup. A lot. And there are a lot of folks
while
who
they're under a dictatorship, a brutal dictatorship, they are cheering on the coup.
Yeah. Cheering it on. Mm-hmm. They're happy about it.
Would you call it a coup though? Because all they did was just
I would call it a coup.
80 people.
It's definitely a coup. Like it's definitely. I mean, he was kicked. Like, what else do you call that shit? Yeah. And like while like the government institutions are still intact, if the United States decides to invade again and it decides to carpet bomb people, like what happened in Gaza, how exactly are the people going to defend themselves from U.S. carpet bombs? Like that was the United States' strategy with the Somoza dictatorship in Nicaragua, was just to carpet bomb everybody in the capital indiscriminately. And did it work? No. The people left in the dead of night and they're like, fuck you. Bomb the city, bitch, and we'll come back the next day and we'll win the revolution. Thank God. But if the United States, like, that can't happen again. Like history does not repeat itself. Like it's not. So if the United States comes and just carpet bombs Caracas, it will be devastating. Like how you can't defend yourself from bombs even if you have an automatic rifle. It's not. though that's not an equal playing field. It's
Right.
just inconceivable. So it's very tense, I would say, because people don't know what's going to happen. There are a lot of Venezuelans who are talking about wanting to go back. When I went to get my empanada in the morning today, because I'm moving, I had my big suitcase with me and like my cat. And the lady was asking, like, "Oh, are you going to Venezuela? Are you Venezuelan? Are you moving?" And I was like, "I mean,
They
I'm
just
moving
think that, oh my
to the
God.
center of the city,
Yeah,
like an
what?
hour away, but like,
Wow. Wow.
no."
I mean, I this is in closing. I am. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up, but I am just astounded by the level of acceptance that America still has with
Yes.
people around the world. It's like America has done such a great job at shadowing their atrocities. They killed 80
And
people.
whitewashing them.
They killed 80
They've done
people
a
in
very good
Venezuela.
job. Well, what I will say is, I especially learned this in Nicaragua, when I was doing my master's research, is that they've done a very good job putting the blame on people who defend themselves against empire versus what the empire actually does to people. And so if you struggle against empire and you win and you suffer the consequences of United States imperialism, of blockade, of constant intervention,
Right.
you brought that on the people by resisting. And you just should have let the neoliberals pillage your country and bleed you dry. And people forget how bad it was in the neoliberal era. Like, as like an occupied country here in Peru, like, our inequality grows every single year. Extreme poverty and poverty grow every single year. Informality grows every single year, not just for internationals and migrants like myself, but also for Peruvians. Like, I have folks that I know who have doctorate degrees who are working in informality because they can't get legitimate jobs, because the informal economy benefits so much foreign enterprise because they don't have to pay benefits. They don't have to pay legal living wage. They can bypass all of these worker protections and guarantees. And if you're working in informality, you cannot then denounce your employer because you're informal and you're not legally employed. And so there's all these benefits to empire, and people would rather live in this uneasy stasis than fight for something better, because you could win. And if you win, things will get better and they'll get worse at the same time until the United States is overthrown. And that is like really the big thing that I want to hammer home in closing. If the United States succeeds in occupying Venezuela, and Peru is now allowing the United States to run military drills willy-nilly in the country, considering the fact we're already occupied, the United States will menace Colombia, they will menace Nicaragua, they will use this in order to menace and invade Cuba as well, and they will try to install a series of far-right backed military governments across Latin America. Literally. So whether or not you like Maduro, it is incredibly important to recognize this has nothing to do with Maduro and everything to do with consolidating United States power and hegemony in the region to control its people and resources. That is the most important takeaway. Your opinion on Maduro does not matter. It is not about him. It is about this power grab and controlling the region.
Right. And I don't know how else more to explain that, because that's exactly what is going on.
Yes. And it's like, if you want to celebrate in the short term, that you crazy for that. You're gonna look back in a year and just be like, oh, that was cringe. That was wrong with me. Yeah. Because again, like, we have never seen the United States intervene anywhere militarily in which anything good happened for the people. And so when Venezuelans are talking to me on the ground here, they're like, oh, like, the economy is going to get better, we're going to have more opportunity. It's like, you specifically actually will not. That opportunity is going to go back to the bourgeois, and it is going to go to the U.S. occupiers and the U.S. military ruling class that installs itself. You will not see that money. And if you think you are struggling now, it will be nothing compared to what happens in the future when the United States just bleeds Venezuela dry.
Yes, and people should relook at how the economy was before Chavez took power.
Yes, because there's a reason why the Bolivarian Revolution took place to begin with.
it was inflation like crazy. Look, kind of like how it is here in America, with the inflation is out of control. People have to go on credit. People are not able to pay their credit. Now they got Afterpay and all these other apps that help you out with interest. You know, it's going to be tightening. And if you think that Donald Trump did anything to make it better here in America, and you think he's going to do it in Venezuela, you are smoking something, probably some good shit, but
I don't want that shit. They got you booked up.
Yeah, like,
but I will say this, and I've told this to my Venezuelan friends here, is that a government like the United States that is currently kidnapping, torturing, and murdering Latinos, not just migrants, because they are just kidnapping people off the street because they look Latino, whatever the fuck that means. Whether or not they have papers or not, there's no due process. They're not checking their documentation. If they have documentation, they do not care because they're showing up at their immigration hearings to abduct them before they even get into the building or even as they're going out, despite the fact that they're receiving green cards. They don't care. If the government is abducting, torturing, and murdering folks, they are not going to invade your country to help you. That should tell you everything you need to know about the government's motivations, especially because when Venezuelans have gone out to celebrate the overthrow of Maduro, they are being abducted by ICE. The government does not care about you. It doesn't give a shit about you. It's not about you. It's about turning Venezuela into a colony for the United States' own benefit at this time of intense imperialist decay.
Yes. And Raymond Parker, I don't want to take any more of your time. I want to thank you so much for joining this panel. You are also welcome. If I know Thursday you're mad busy, but if you are welcome as well.
Thursday's my day off, so I'm good Thursday.
So you are welcome to come back on for the part 2 of this series. Sorry about the miscommunication in email. I suck at emailing.
You're totally good. It's also my fault for not having my email downloaded to my phone because I have no space. Because in order to do my stuff, I do a lot of TikTok and influencing. So you can find me on social media on TikTok and on Instagram as Raimundo y Pepino. That is RAIMUNDO Pepino is my cat.
Email me.
I'll send you the links. Yeah. And you can see a lot more of our environmental work and me hanging out with my cat, mostly our environmental work. I may or may not make a very dangerous post talking about this situation from the same perspective, because this perspective is very much lacking in Peru, in a lot of our in a lot of spaces. So, and I have a lot of reach with the local population here in Cusco. And I think this is something that we actually really do need to have a serious conversation about, and the implications of the United States embarking on another wave of imperialist attacks and occupation in Latin America.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a history we need to remember, because we've been here before.
The best way that you can. Thank you for all the work that you do. And have a really good day. And for everybody,
you too.
Have a really good day as well too. Please share this out. I saw some people sharing on Twitter. Thank you so much. Thank
you so much for having me on.
And I'll talk to you later. Have a good day.
Blank period, yeah. On my black, brown, and indigenous. Gotta holler if you really feeling this. Gotta holler if you really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?